examples that you see up on the screen, you'll be able to go ahead and create a flow that can interact perfectly with Tableau Desktop. That's the next tool that I'll be talking with. And it'll give you an idea to really clean your data. This is so important. You want to make sure that your data is clean before you do any sort of intricate or simple analysis, because otherwise if you're dealing with duplicates or unclean data, so to speak, your analysis is going to be completely incorrect. So, the Tableau tool to go ahead and use to do a lot of this prep is Tableau Prep Builder. It's a pretty easy interface for you to work with. So it's pretty fun to use. It's not too bad. I like having multiple ways of getting things done, and having this tool available within the Tableau environment to just keep everything, centralized within the Tableau world provides a nice, stable core of products that you can use and rely on. Okay, so you can connect the data on-prem or in the cloud, whether it's a database or a spreadsheet. You have the ability to clean your data without using a whole bunch of crazy code. So think about Tableau Prep Builder in this capacity. And if you have it, go ahead and play with it a little bit more. If you're curious about it, get yourself a trial, play with it a little bit more, see what it's about. It could help you. So I've mentioned about Tableau Desktop. This is what I generally use when I'm doing a lot of my development. It just gives you the tools for real-time analysis and be able to do stuff. You can create worksheets, you can create dashboards, you can create stories. You can have these worksheets work with each other. We've gotten, these are some things that you just kind of want to take a look at. I don't want to take this for granted, because when you develop something in Tableau Desktop, you open it up and you're just like, my God, I just have this blank canvas. I don't know what the hell to do. And I have these shelves. I don't know what shelves are, measures and dimensions. What else in your mind will just kind of be like that. So, okay, take a deep breath. Understand when you get into Tableau Desktop, you're going to try and answer an analytical question visually. Okay? Start there. Start with the data that you have, that you either set up in Tableau Prep or set up at the database level or what have you, and then figure out what you want to compare. What do you want on your rows? What do you want on your columns? This Tableau Desktop will enable you to do that. It's a drag and drop interface. It's very easy to use. You can connect to a multitude of different data sources, and you can create a multitude of different types of calculations. Last year, it sounds so long ago, but back in October, I started talking to you about a level of detail commands. These are the types of commands that you can build within Tableau Desktop. And having these workbooks, which are a combination of worksheets, dashboard objects, maybe stories, and so forth, will have a collection of all of these items there from measures and such. So as here, you can see like this nice scatter plot. You can see the line there to give you exactly what you need based off of what you're looking for. You can build anything that you need within this Tableau Desktop and have it communicate to either Tableau Server or Tableau Cloud, and be able to share collaborate and share with confidence, knowing that everything is protected. So Tableau Server. Tableau Server is basically the basement that I've been living in for the last 3 years or so. It allows you, it's just a scalable platform to allow you to collaborate with your data analytics and your business intelligence, whether it be a dashboard, a story, a collection of dashboards. You can work in Tableau Desktop, communicate with Tableau Server, and be able to publish anything that you need in different spots within your zero footprint web environment that Tableau Server offers, and so that you can be able to share with your group and your team and your company what you've been able to do and what questions and what dashboards will answer those analytic questions. So you can scale, you can have a single server install, you can have a multi-node install, you do have the ability to have certain, hard, long-running dashboards run on particular nodes, and you have a centralized area for data governance and security. If you do a lot of stuff on Azure, interacting with SSO and SAML and things like that. I will be probably speaking a lot more about Tableau Server somewhere down the road a little bit to crack the code on some of that stuff. But being able to use Tableau Server on a cloud, or whether it be AWS or Azure or just something else, you can rest assured that this is the right place for you to learn more about Tableau Server. And if you don't want to deal with upgrades, if you're tired of dealing with upgrades and don't want to ever deal with it again, the thing you probably want to look at is Tableau Cloud, because you don't have to do any of that ever again. So you can rely on Tableau to do all the updates and maintenances for you. It's a cloud-based platform for publishing, and sharing dashboards, just like we have here. You have the same interoperability that you would have with Tableau Server, in the sense that Tableau Desktop can publish to your Tableau Cloud environment in the exact same way. And so this is pretty interesting too, because now you have two options on whether or not how you want your backend to be managed, right? So if you want to build and scale, however, you probably want to take a look at Tableau Cloud with Advanced Management. That offers limitless scalability, optimal efficiency, and simplified security. You can still use SSO with Tableau Cloud or your identity provider. You can monitor usage in one environment. If you have security patches that need to be done, as an administrator, you don't have to worry about that anymore. You can go ahead and have Tableau Cloud take care of that for you. So it just matters. It gives you another option of being able to integrate Tableau into whatever type of architecture that your company or organization supports. So same old thing happens here. Okay, it's just that it's not living on either a VM that's in your environment or a tangible machine that's in your environment as well. The last tool I want to talk about is Tableau Pulse. So Tableau Pulse is basically where data visualization meets AI. You have the ability to go ahead and find out all these insights all in one fell swoop. And so it helps organizations automate this analysis and share insights in one central area. So it helps everyone in your organization and make your jobs better. You get insights faster. The insights platform will automatically detect drivers, trends, contributors, and outliers for the metrics that you follow. It gives you proactively flags changes that potentially could matter to you. When you're talking about next-gen experiences, Tableau Pulse will provide digestible data insights that you can use wherever you like to work, whether it be Slack, whether it be email, Salesforce, or any other application. It can push all of those pieces of information out to your medium of choice, right? And so the last part of this is we were talking about increasing productivity. Tableau Pulse is powered by Tableau AI, a suite of predictive generative AI capabilities that simplifies and democratizes data. And so what you want to do here is that thanks to that, Tableau Pulse makes it easy to discover relevant metrics, surfaces automated analytics in plain language, and proactively anticipates user questions. So this gives you a head start. If you're not quite, sure what you want to do, allow Tableau Pulse to go ahead and at least get your creative juices flowing to say, oh, well, Tableau saw this. Maybe I can look at this. Oh, maybe I think of this too. And maybe, this gives you another way to open the door to figure out what actually has to happen here. Okay, so Tableau AI is built on the Einstein trust layer, which means that enables trusted, ethical, and open AI powered experiences without compromising security. Okay, so that is your quick synopsis on all the products and everything. I'm always happy to answer any questions. You can find me here. You can find me physically here in my office, or find me on LinkedIn or whatever. And as always, thank you so much for the time.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. We'll see if anyone has any questions, feel free to jump in the chat or DM. I actually had one, Chris, and it's the same one that Eric seems to have, of when was Tableau Pulse released, or has it been fully released yet? Because I know it was in beta recently.
Still in beta. You can get to it now. They have actually something on the Tableau website that says, "Hey, do you want to sign up for the beta?" I have played with it since TC last year, and I've seen it in the last 2 months, and it's grown a bit. So, as far as when it's going to be available to the masses for real, that's an excellent question. I have a feeling that it could be a TC question, meaning you may find out in San Diego if you're heading down there. But yeah. What are some of the limitations that I could feel be improved with each product? That's an excellent question. I think Tableau Desktop is awesome. I don't really have any complaints with Tableau Desktop at all.
I have one.
What do you have?
And it's the size slider. I wish you could just type in like 50% size, 25% size, 75% size. We've all submitted it to the ideas, and they still haven't done it. That's mine.
I get, when we're at TC, we can hold their feet to the fire on that, because the little things like that, they tend to be like,
oh yeah.
Yeah. The only other thing that I would probably say, and I didn't mention this intentionally because it's a can of worms, they also offer a tool called Tableau Bridge, which needs to go back into the lab and stay there. I just think that, when you're trying to communicate from on-prem to the cloud, I think there's a better way of doing it. I guess another thing I would probably say is, I'm a server hack and a geek. There are some things that Tableau Online doesn't offer on Tableau Server that I think would make it tighter. I understand I don't necessarily need to do any of the load balancing that I would have to do with Tableau Server by adding node after node. I'm okay with allowing Tableau Online, their advanced management, to deal with it. But being able to run things at command line using Tableau Online or Tableau Cloud is somewhat problematic. Like, using the command line over there is a pain. There are a lot of arguments and a lot of plain text that you have to use. So yeah, Snowflake's an art. I would just say, using it with Tableau, it's doable. It's an art. I mean, you really have to, the underscores and the spaces is a real pain. But with Snowflake, it's more nitpicky tedium that just it gets you 97% there, but that last 3% makes you have to walk around the block to cross the street. It's probably the best way to describe Snowflake. Snowflake, and I know it sounds horrible, but it's true.
My peeve limitation is published data sources not being able to be linked together.
Mm-hmm.
As such, I'm repeating queries in multiple dashboards so that can pull the same data but connect it to different other data.
Yeah, that might be something I might talk to later in the year.
Mm-hmm.
I might have found something to deal with that.
Ooh.
I'm also seeing containers being a nightmare, which they are very hard to get a hang of. We did have a session on this.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember when. Emily's really excited that I'm mentioning that this is previously a session.
Wait, does that do fireworks? I'm so sorry. That's wild.
Yeah, it's behind you, like a background.
I know, but I didn't realize it was
it's
not doing it for Danny.
You're having a house party behind you and you're not inviting us. What's up with that?
What?
That's incredible. It's just not recognizing Danny's face doing it. So sorry, Danny.
Yeah, it might be worth maybe, and this is part of the things that we can talk about in the chat as well as online. If there's something that maybe we had done last year or something you would like us to revisit, please let us know, and we will do our best to try to, accommodate those. So, but I don't want to take any more time. So I'll thank you so much for the time that you have. If you have any additional questions, just reach out, and I would be more than happy to answer them.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. May, are you ready to go? We're excited.
Let's I think you may have hyped it too much. You said it was going to be really cool. It's going to be really basic.
Basic can be cool too.
That's true. Now okay, let's share that screen. Let's share this screen. Okay. Okay, so I primarily work on desktops, so that's where I'm going to be as far as environments. I do usually then publish to server for my internal customers, but that is where we will live for this demo. I'm going to use a saved data source that's open data here. I'm going to grab world indicators. At some other time, if you want to look at connecting to different kinds of data sources, we can cover that in a separate look. But for now, we've got some nice open source data here. So we've got a whole bunch of world indicators, and let's say our audience is interested in looking at life expectancy and seeing how that lines up with some other information. So let's grab life expectancy, and we'll just kind of drag that out here. You will notice Tableau loves to make everything a sum. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch that for these purposes to an average. And that one is specifically male. And we'll grab the female as well. And so now we have two different, switch that to average as well. And so now we've got the life expectancy of men and of women, but they're really separate here. And they're static. And I think I want to look at them over time. So I can grab my year down here, and I can drag that onto my columns. And so now we have these lines that go across. You can see over time, both appear to be rising, but they're tricky to compare to one another when they're separate like this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move us into a dual axis by right-clicking here, switch to dual axis, and now they're both together. Now here they look like they're really close together, but you'll notice that the scale is different. So they're both trending similarly, but maybe not in the same way. So I'm going to switch it to synchronize the axis. And so now you can see where they are relative to each other. So they're both climbing, but the male rate is typically lower than the female average life expectancy.
May, we do have one question, and I can help tag team it if you want, but this might be a silly question. No such thing as silly question.
No.
But when do you know when you need to change the pill from sum to average?
Well, that depends on your data a little bit. In this case, here, let's back up a step. So if we go back to our data source tab, we're looking at individual lines here for individual countries with a lot of different information. We've got a lot of just data points. We're going to have one per year, per country. There may be some gaps in the data. But since we're looking specifically at the life expectancy, we know that we've got an age here for each row. And when I grabbed the pill originally and it dropped in as sum, you could see that it was like 170,000. Obviously, that is not a reasonable life expectancy for a person. So it was adding them all together, and it doesn't make sense for the data in this case to have a sum. Cases where you would want a sum, things like sales, anything where you want it aggregated in that way, it's really going to vary depending on your data. So usually I look at the number and say, does that number make sense for the question that I'm asking it? So if I change it back, I guess it wasn't 140,000, it was 14,000, but still, that's way too long. Nobody lives that long that we know of. So So we've got life expectancy, male and female, over time. But maybe for some reason we want to look at it as a bar chart. Oops, now we can only see one bar because the one that's in front is the female life expectancy and it is higher. So if we swap it, now you can see that the other one is still there. It was just hiding from you. Let's say we want to look at maybe some of the things that maybe correlate with that. So we've got, let's grab life expectancy. If you right click, you can change that without having to click the little down caret. I usually don't remember to bother, but if we undo here, I can right click, drag, and then it gives me this menu where I can make a choice before it even shows me the answer. And let's say we want to look at it compared to how much we're spending per capita. Okay, so right now, because it's all in one, we've got a single data point, but we can grab our country or region and put that on our detail, and then we'll have a little scatter plot. You can see we've got some way out here that spend a lot more per capita, and interestingly, the life expectancy seems to kind of cap out here, regardless of how much we're spending. So that's an interesting, potentially interesting thing to look at. Let's see. And then let's see, what else do we want to look at to grab? So we'll have one more for a couple more things for the dashboard so that we have a couple of different shapes. Let's just do this as text. We don't want a sum. Go average. And then this number is only 2 decimals. That's okay. But for me, I usually prefer to just bring it down to 1, especially if I get a lot of data points on one page. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to click my little down caret. And I'm going to change my default properties. I'm going to change my number format to custom and take it down to 1 decimal point. I can come down to my tabs and I can rename. Give these some names.
May, I don't know if you've already come up with these names, but this is always my least favorite part of dashboarding, figuring out what to call them.
Yeah, it's always a thing.
But it's important though.
It is.
Because if you win the lottery and someone else is following after you, you kind of want to have some context. I'll be positive. How's that?
Great. So and now I'm going to pop over and create an initial dashboard. It also comes up with a blank name. Yes, I did give some thought to some of these, although they are not coming out exactly the way that I made them on my practice run.
It never does.
But that's okay.
Yeah. We also have an interesting question from Eric in the chat, but I think it might be good to save till the end of your section.
Ooh, oh yeah, okay. So we'll start from, we'll get through this dashboard and then I will address that. I mostly work in dashboards for the nature of my audience, but I have used stories on one occasion. So that dashboard also comes up with a totally blank slate. I actually do like containers to some extent, but so let's drag a couple of things on here. And so it sizes them however it really feels like it. And it gave me my one little legend over here, but you can't really see everything. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to change the way that it fits. For this one, I am going to fit entire view. Then I'm going to format this so that it centers some things so that you kind of keep them together. Oh, that one does not want to go. Okay. And then what I am going to do, I am going to create a little horizontal container here. And I'm going to drop this one into there. And I'm going to give myself a blank on each side to push that one into the middle. It didn't want to drop it in the side, so sometimes I end up putting it not where I wanted it and then shifting it around. And then now I can tell the container what I want to do with the sizing. I can select the container and tell it to distribute the contents evenly. And that
Hey,
drops this
May.
one right back in the middle.
Hey, May. Really quickly, I think you are sharing when you click share screen. I don't know if there's an option to share the entire screen or if you've shared specifically Tableau, but when you right click, we can't see the menus that are dropped down.
Oh.
Just as
Well,
a
let
heads up.
me try sharing it the other way. I did just share Tableau.
Okay. Thanks, Eric, for the heads up.
Yeah. Entire screen, that one. So I will back that up. So we got distribute contents evenly in here. And then over here, these actually aren't right-click menus, but they are menus. I went to entire view here. That one's a right-click menu. Right-click, go to format. And I want that pane text to be a little bit bigger. I feel like that's my focus point here. And then I'm going to grab a vertical container. I'm going to grab my horizontal container and drag it inside the other container. Grab this one and drop it down below it. Nope, back that up. I'm going to drop a blank in there first. And that has been one of the tricks when I'm finding that my containers are not doing what I want them to do. Dropping a blank into it first maintains some other space for me to work with. And so now this blank here, yeah, undo is definitely your friend. Blank is not a container. It's just an object. So it just holds space within the container for me. I love a blank. I use them actually quite a bit. But so the blank is just like any other viz inside. In this case, it's inside the container, but it doesn't have to be. I will use some in a minute here that are not going to be inside containers. So now I'm going to, from here, I'm going to select the horizontal, and then I'm going to go ahead and select my vertical container. And I'm going to go ahead and distribute evenly again. And then I'm going to delete my blank because I'm done with it. Here, I'm going to show you where I'm going to drop some blanks that are not inside the container. And then I'm going to squish it. I'm just creating a little bit of space at the edge here so that when I pull my title in, it comes all the way to the edge, but the visualizations don't. Yeah, sometimes padding is more useful than the blank for sure. It depends on what you're doing and how you want. For holding that space inside the container, nothing beats blank though.
Totally.
I have never bothered to color them. That's a good idea. But what I am going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I am going to go up to my whole space, and I'm going to give that a background. Let's give it kind of a medium dark gray, maybe. And then if I give these a white, then it'll kind of make them pop out. You can also use borders or any other way of drawing the eye that you like. This part, I often will just play with it until I like it. Oh, that popped up over there. Center it. All right. And, oh, I don't like, there we go. That's what I want. There's always a bit of trial and error to get where you want to be. But so I might, pardon me, then play with what else I want to see. I don't think I'm going to get into any dashboard actions on this one. We could add filters if you wanted to only look at the most recent few years. We could look at if you wanted to limit by country. But that is basic getting your visualizations created and onto a dashboard. Of course, the nature of your visualizations will vary depending on your audience and the data that you're working with. And then the one other thing that I like to do is I like to mess with my tooltips. These are the default tooltips. Again, you've got that life expectancy out to 3 decimals. I don't feel like that's necessary, but so I can come in and I can change my default property, number format. And when you do it over here in your default properties, it will stick through the rest of your builds within that workbook. I'm going to pop up the tooltip. I always like to turn off my command buttons, and I like to do a natural phrasing. I do cheat with the formatting so that I can get the same font here as the default. I say the life expectancy. So I've basically said the sentence that I want to answer what question this view is answering. And then I will just drop my little variables in here. I'm going to match that. I'll get rid of all of that. So now this one is in a natural phrasing, which at least for my audience, it tends to be preferred. Because I did this one here, and then I would just go match it in this one as well. That's what I had planned for this installment. As far as stories, with something like this kind of data, a story actually might be pretty great. This data is pretty old and is static, at least in this format. For my purposes, for my work, my data is changing every day, and so the story itself might change every day. And so it doesn't make sense for my audience to build it in that way, because they are looking for daily changes to the data rather than single point in time trends. Look back. Maybe a year in review would be an excellent time potentially to do a story because the year is over and it's not gonna change.
I'll also just really quickly, well, first of all, yeah, well done, May. That was a beautiful, beautiful presentation. So glad that you did that. That was really, really great. The one thing I just wanted to add is something I put in the chat, but just to surface it a little bit more. One of the things that I found, stories are a little complicated. They're a little weird in the same way that we've found that dashboard formatting is also a little tricky and just is nuanced. The best use case for me personally that I have found is documentation for stories, because what stories allow you to do is take little snapshots of things. I will often use stories as a way to describe what's happening in either the data model, the data pane, or documentation about calculations that are a little complicated. A lot of times I'll have a calculation sheet that sort of verifies that the calculations that I've made in Tableau are correct or make sense. And so I will put that in a story along with a bunch of comments just to talk people through what I did, especially because as a consultant, I'm handing a workbook back. But I also think that in general, just for sort of transparency, and if anybody ever inherits the workbooks that you're working on, it's helpful just to use it for documentation. So that's the best use case I found for them.
Yeah, you can also do synchronized scroll. That's the biggest hack I found, but that's for another time. Oh, Emily, it's actually a good solution. It's not the one that you've seen me do with parameter actions. It's much less gross, but I digress. Does anyone else have any other questions for May before I jump into my extremely exciting and riveting talk about what you've all been waiting for, dates and dimensions and measures?
Let's get it.
All right. So I'll go ahead and dive in, and I'm going to go share my screen so we're all looking at the same thing. So dimensions and measures are very closely tied to these concepts of discrete versus continuous, however they are different. So the reason that I'm talking about this is discrete versus continuous, you're going to see on your drop downs a lot. You're going to see this a lot as well if you go to the forums. It's just good to know the verbiage and also understand why certain things behave the way that they do. So before I talk about dimensions versus measures, I'm going to clarify a little bit about the difference between discrete and continuous in Tableau. So first, looking at them, these are our pill colors. So when you're interacting with Tableau, those things that May was dragging earlier that kind of look like pills, you may have noticed they come in two colors. They come in this blue and the green. And most of the time, your dimensions will be blue and your measures will be green, but that isn't always the case. What the colors actually signify is the difference between discrete and continuous. So discrete is there's no in between. And that's why it's so closely tied to your dimensions. So when we have customer name, you know, if Chris and Emily are customers, there's no real in between of Chris and Emily. They're two distinct, discrete entities. So when you're interacting in Tableau and you have one of these discrete fields, these blue fields, always think that this is going to result in either a header or some sort of blocks. So what we can see here is if you were to drag this discrete pill onto columns or rows, you would see individual headers for each data object. And then if you were to drag a discrete blue pill onto color, you're going to get an individual color for each, as well as for size. And I would like to call out here for size, I would strongly recommend against using a discrete pill on size, except for in very specific situations, maybe t-shirt sizes, but you can do it. But just because you can doesn't always mean you should. Now, looking at our green pills, our continuous pills, those are going to result in something more like an axis or a spectrum. And this is where things can start, where you can start to have in-betweens. You can take half of Chris's sales and half of Emily's sales and figure out what the in-between is there. When you drag these onto your different fields and different locations on your Tableau desktop, it's going to result in either an axis or some sort of spectrum. So when we drag it onto columns or rows, we're going to see an axis for, in this case, I'm using sales. Whereas if you drag it onto color, you can start to see the smallest sale we've ever made in the Superstore data set that I used to make this is $5. The largest is $25,043. So it's going to give a different color for every value between here and there. And yeah, I like, thanks for calling out the matrix, blue pill, red pill. I also always think of that. It looks a little different on size, but actually tends to make more sense. So everything that's around $5,000 here is going to be around this size. 15,000 is going to be around this size. I just put it on a square mark. This is where you can start to make something like a tree map, where you can put these on size and it'll tell you how much, what percent visually is making up of a whole. So discrete, continuous. Think for discrete, we're doing headers or blocks, continuous, axis, and spectrum. Whereas dimensions and measures are a little bit different, where dimensions are how we are going to splice and dice our data is the term that I've always heard. So we're going to cut it off. I can think of very, very few mainstream, if any, cases where you're going to find a continuous measure or continuous dimension outside of sometimes your date field will end up as a dimension, but continuous. But measures, the key to understanding measures is that they are aggregated data. They can be aggregated. So what that kind of means is you can take the sum, the average, like May was talking about. It's those typically numeric, but not always, fields. So those are going to be our measures. You will see sometimes a discrete measure if you have a calculated field. So if you're within a calculated field, let's say you're doing a basic if-then calculation. If you have aggregation within that calculation, then it's going to be a measure. However, if the output of that is a string, then it's going to be a blue pill because it is discrete. It is either yes or no, above or below 5,000, for example. So then this conversation gets a little tricky when we start to get into dates. And I am going to address dates. I would usually pause for questions, but looking at time, I want to make sure we get to this because I know a lot of people get annoyed with dates in Tableau. And I'll share one of my favorite articles on dates and better understanding them is called "Why Dates in Tableau Make Me Want to Tear My Hair Out." So if you've been frustrated with dates in Tableau, you are not alone. Tableau breaks out dates into two separate parts. We have our date parts and our date values. And these are not the same thing as discrete dates and continuous dates. When you think of discrete dates or continuous dates, if you see any article that has that, be cautious because those are often confused, especially in the early days of Tableau. But really just think you're just changing the color of the pill. If you're going from discrete to continuous with dates, it's just changing the color of the pill, not the actual behavior of the dates. Outlined here is those two types of dates are actually date parts and date values. So date parts we're going to look at New Year's Eve, which we just had. When you look at date parts, it's just taking that individual part of the date. So when we're looking at month of this date, it's just December. It's not accounting for what year that's happening. When we're looking at days, it's the 31st. It's not accounting for, well, is it the 31st of December or January or February, even though February doesn't have 31. But that is going to be useful for things like heat maps, finding time of day, time of week. If you want to know information about, how do we do on the first day of sales of every month? If you don't have a regular working week or weekends don't matter, just how is the first or last day of the month? This is going to be where that starts to be helpful. Whereas date values are, think of it kind of as the level you're zooming in. So if we look back at our example of New Year's Eve, when we choose the value of, or the date value of month, it's going to just show everything at the level of month of that year. So month being December of 2023, November of 2023, January of 2024. And then day is going to be all of that information. You're looking at that specific day, December 31st, 2023. So this is where you want to think timelines. And if I just open up Tableau really quick so I can show y'all what this looks like. I'm going to drag order date is going to be that most common. And I'm sorry, it's a little small here. But you have the two sections, this top section that just shows 2015, Q2, May, and then 8. Those are your date parts. So this top section is your date parts, whereas down below are your date values. So you have year, you have quarter, which date value, quarter of year, month, month of year, down below. So when we start to look at these, that's where you're going to get a timeline where the level of detail is at month, as opposed to if we do the date part of month, it's just going to give us 12, and you can think of them as bars. So this is the sales of January across all of our different years. Whereas if I do the date value of month, our first value is going to be the number of sales, in this case, in January of 2019. So I see we're right at time. I can stick around for questions, but want to let y'all know, feel free to hop off. Thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate you. And we'll see you next month at our in-person tug. More information to follow. I'm going to stop recording.